Folks, our first on-demand workshop, How to Become a Coffee Consultant, is now available for you to learn at your own pace for just €50, and it comes with a certificate upon completion. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for more details. Support this podcast by supporting our sponsors. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of our 5-part series with Marianella from Farmers Project. And we are talking direct trade from the perspective of the coffee producer. And today we are asking the question, what is the financial reality of direct trade for coffee producers? Marianella, take it away. Help us understand that from the perspective of somebody who's steeped heavily in this idea.
Thank you so much, Lee. I think that continuing our conversation about direct trade, I think one of the questions I get most often is, why don't small producers do more direct trade? I mean, what's the barrier? And the first one I would say is financial barrier, because when we began Farmers Project and we invited other farmers to collaborate and try to connect all the dots from the farm to small roasters in the United States, the first question was, how much am I going to get paid? And we said, no, we're doing it as a team. We're not buying the coffee. We're each putting our coffee from our farm in microlots, and we're all taking the risk together, and then we'll all have the reward together. So it's a long journey. We're going to have to not only go through harvest, but through wet milling, dry milling, exporting, importing, and then waiting for payment. And financially is a huge stop sign for small farmers, because people don't realize that small farmers and most farmers only get paid once a year during harvest. And if you are the typical 3-5 acre or smaller farmer, you're taking your coffee to a co-op, to the nearest co-op receiving station, and you get your tickets or your receipts to come and get your paycheck on Saturday. And you get your paycheck and you got to pay your pickers, and then you just take some home. And also a big part of this paycheck was actually taken out before you got paid, was the debt you had to the co-op, because co-ops are there are good co-ops and bad co-ops. However, I do realize and see in my experience, there's a lot of corruption, because there's a lot of bureaucracy. To have a good seat at the co-op, requires some finagling and some, friendships and bureaucracy. So what happens is co-ops have taken on a role of kind of a business/government institution. And they serve as a credit card for the producers. And there is a business for them to be had as far as providing inputs and providing, all the fertilizers are bought in bulk, and then they sell them to the producer on a credit card. And guess when the credit card gets paid? At harvest. So they actually take that payment in coffee, and then on Saturday, they pay the producer the rest. Well, how did you stretch that little bit of money all the way for 16, 18 months? You actually have to wait. If you're doing direct trade, you have to wait for your coffee to get to the destination and for your customer to pay, and your customer in that destination may even ask for a little bit of financing, because if they bought a larger amount, they want to take it, on a monthly or quarterly basis, and they want to pay on a monthly or quarterly basis. So financially, that's the biggest barrier of entry for farmers, for small farmers to do direct trade.
Why do you think this isn't more widely understood from the consuming end of the supply chain? You spent time between Costa Rica and the United States, and we're going to talk about the marketing that's involved in, like, the cost of marketing and all of that in a second. But why do you think that there is such a disconnect between what's actually happening with regarding to the financing side of direct trade and the reality of how people understand it at the consuming end?
I think, first of all, the whole system has always been set up to be a trading system. So it's for the powerful exporters and importers to manage the chain, the value chain.
Right.
And so there isn't a conversation or a connection between the smaller farmer and the roaster that really wants that traceability right to the farm, because the system has always been set up for volume too, for the C market. And so when you're trying to do micro lots, I meet roasters all over the world that really want those amazing micro lots, but the roasting community also has a disconnect amongst themselves. They're not collaborating. There aren't co-ops, not very many co-ops in the United States or North America that where roasters get together and say, let's source together with a group of small farmers. I always ask roasters, why don't you guys team up like we team up as small producers to be able to accomplish the long journey all the way to United States? You guys could team up. I see a lot more of a community, like in the brewing, the beer brewing community, share a lot more than the roasting. It's almost like a very secrety,
It's
very
wild, isn't it?
Yeah, there's not collaboration. And really, we go back to volume, and the viability of exporting has to start with one container. So when you have one small roaster wanting 2 pallets of a microlot, 20 bags, and you have this great producer with the 20 bags exactly of what they wanted, it's impossible to connect that because of volume, and you're not going to export that by plane, right? You need a container, and consolidation of microlots is not easy to achieve. So I think that the challenge is that there's not enough of a channel of communication between the smaller producers and the smaller roasters, and we all tend to rely on those powerhouses and those bigger importers that are doing containers and then telling us it's direct trade, but it's not really direct trade because it went through many layers already from the farmer. The farmer, when my husband and I started, we had many exporters roll out the red carpet for us and say, oh, you're producing amazing coffee and you're doing all these honeys, and oh my God, we got invited to come to their offices. And when we said, no, what we want to achieve is real direct trade, we have already a handful of roasters in the United States willing to pay us direct for our coffee. And they would say, well, we'll facilitate all the logistics. You just give us the list of your customers and we'll pay you right here for your coffee. And we're like, no, that's not direct trade. And that's not what we want to do. Yeah. So, but that's the reality of what's going on the ground, and the difficulty of connecting and being able to source. It starts with, I think, is volume and finances, really, when you look at it.
Another part of the financial burden of this is actually the effort that's required when you're doing direct trade to actually go and find buyers for your coffee. That's a huge investment with regards to the commitment of traveling to the United States, being based in the United States, marketing your coffee, going and doing cuppings, finding people. What's that burden like for you as a direct trade producer?
Okay, I actually don't see it as a burden. I see it as a privilege.
Oh, nice.
When my husband and I, after living at the farm and just really doing the farmer life for 4 years in a small farm, we realized we had been burning through our savings faster than we thought. And we finally realized we can't make a living out of a small farm. This is, again, I said from the beginning, we were very naive, right? And we're like, okay, we need to connect with the buyers And we need to figure out a way to get back to United States to be able to bring more buyers to our group and for them to see what we're doing at the farm level. It was very sad for me to be able to, to actually have to tell the farmers from Farmers Project that we were going to have to also live in the United States, and we were not going to be in Costa Rica permanently, but we were going to be going back and forth. And I got very emotional when I told them. I literally cried. I felt like I was abandoning them in a way. And I will never forget that one of the farmers, and it was the first comment I got, and I still get emotional. He said, "Great, now we have an ambassador."
Yeah, beautiful. Love that.
And
Silver lining.
Yes, that is the role I have taken. It's an honor for me to be their voice. And I see it as a responsibility, as a privilege to just be able to get all these roasters to come to Costa Rica and see each one of our farms and see how we team up and every step of the way, how we do it together. And people are like, wow, you guys are the real thing. How do you do this? And I always go back to it all. The whole foundation is trust. And that's why I can't write a book that says do A to Z and you achieve direct trade, because A is trust. And how do you build that is very difficult and then the privilege of me being able to be a citizen of the United States and a citizen of Costa Rica and connect that loop that you're talking about, because I go back and forth literally every couple months. I follow the bean, and I am very privileged to see that and to be the voice here and there and the connector and just to have the relationships, deep relationships with our roasters and with the farmers. And so it is very difficult, and that's why it's not very replicable, I would say. It's just I get a lot of, especially women that I absolutely would love to say, here's the recipe, just follow this, do this, and you're gonna get to direct trade. And I've had people from Africa, women from Africa, say, Marianella, can we talk over WhatsApp and can you show me how to do what you're doing? And I'm like, gosh, how do I find a recipe to replicate and share with people? Because it also leads something very important. It takes finding those roasters that are willing to meet you halfway, the roasters that think out of the box, the roasters that are willing to take that first risk. I remember when we got the very first customer from Lincoln, Nebraska, and they said they would order 10 bags. And I was like, oh my God, now we have to figure out how to get the 10, It's like it was the first order. So now all of the roasters that are part of Farmers Project, and we see ourselves as a family, is like, it really took them to also step out of their comfort zone and trust that we were going to deliver what we promised, trust that we were going to have the quality that we were sending in those cupping reports and in those samples, because everybody knows what happens between the farm and the delivery. And so they were taking a big chance on us. And so it does take a huge amount of commitment from both sides.
Yeah, it's amazing that people don't really appreciate the investment other than the money and the time. Like the investment in building the relationships that's required for this is huge. So now we want to go in the next episode, folks, we're going to take a look at some of the failures of direct trade. With everything in this, we like to look at coffee bags and see how everybody's doing this amazing job at doing all these amazing things. But the reality of it is this is the coffee industry and it's the coffee supply chain, and there is some darker sides to all of this. So join us in the next episode for the third part of this 5-part series, and we'll see you then. Peace, love, and peanut butter, folks. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, friends. There are 2 ways you can support this podcast. Firstly, become a paid member of our YouTube channel. Secondly, you can join our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video before you leave, and check the show notes for more information. Now, this is what you should check out next.